Promise of Blood. What if one of the most fascinating magic systems in modern fantasy was buried beneath an opening so chaotic that you almost walked away before discovering its brilliance? That is exactly where I find myself with Promise of Blood. Brian McClellan. This is the Read and Rant Podcast.
Welcome to the Rated and Rant Podcast, where we don't sugarcoat anything. No filters, no holding back. Just raw, loud opinions. Turn it up and get ready.
All right, this is an episode of the Rant Table because this novel throws you into the story with an in media res opening. Now, that's a kind of writing style that basically it's a narrative style that begins right in the middle of the action instead of easing readers into the world. And if you listen to this podcast before, you already know how I feel about that style of storytelling. And traditional publishing is at it again. And one of my biggest frustrations with opening a massive fantasy epic this way is that I don't have a reason to emotionally invest in anybody. The characters haven't been developed enough for me to care who they are, where they came from, or why I should be invested and what they're fighting for. Instead, the story drops you into political upheaval, military conflict, and magical warfare at full speed and simply expects you to keep up. Thankfully, Brian McClellan gives the reader breadcrumbs. If honestly, also, if he hadn't started feeding me context clues as the story progressed, I would have instantaneously DNF'd this book. The pacing is relentless. New characters arrive one after the other. Entire factions are introduced with very little or no explanation. Terms like the privilege or powder mages are thrown at you almost instantaneously, and you are honestly left trying to piece together how this world actually works while the plot keeps charging forward. And honestly, it can be frustrating. But here's where the novel completely changes the conversation. The powder mages, they are one of the most original magical concepts I have ever come across at all. These mages literally consume gunpowder like they snort it to fuel their abilities. It enhances their senses and it overpower and empowers themselves to manipulate bullets in flight, redirecting gunfire and turning firearms into extensions of their magic, like they did in Wanted. They can curb bullets to the point that they can uh, explode on inanimate objects that don't hurt anybody. That to me is honestly is incredibly cool. It's one of the most amazing fantasy concepts that immediately separates itself from the rest of the crowd. And I have to give Brian McClellan credit for that idea because that is something that is just genuinely fresh. Unfortunately, the world had been introduced with a little more patience and the characters were fleshed out more. For me, old school epic fantasy, and I think this new exposition in media res style of epic fantasy, those are two different writing styles, but I really think that epic fantasy, that writing style should really make a comeback because epic fantasy succeeds when it builds trust with the reader first, when it establishes its world, its history, and its characters before asking us to navigate complicated political systems and layered magic. However, here the plot is moving at a breakneck pace and speed, while the character development and world building really struggle to keep pace. And I'm constantly stopping to ask myself, wait, who is this again? Why is this happening? And how are these people connected? And eventually, those answers do begin to arrive, but they arrive after a fair amount of frustration and confusion. However, despite all that, I cannot put this book down because underneath the confusion is something incredibly compelling. Like, imagine Pirates of the Caribbean colliding with the tactical military fantasy of Dragonlance with Rachel and Magier and the Tower of High Sorcery. While the mage here in these books, you take Raceland and put him on steroids because mages carry not only their staff but a firearm. And instead of relying solely on spells, they rely on, some of their magical abilities that is derived from the gunpowder. That is the energy that this book gives off. It feels gritty, explosive, no pun intended, and it feels like anything else sitting on my bookshelf. But yes, I'm frustrated. Yes, I think the opening could have been significantly stronger with more context, better, character development with characters being fleshed out and world building to explain this amazing system and world that the author is trying to is introducing to the reader. But I'm also fascinated. Like, I still don't know why the novel is called Promise of Blood. I still don't know exactly where this trilogy is heading, and I still don't fully understand every moving piece of this world. Yet, that is the single key word I am going to count on because it is yet. Yeah, I'm going to continue reading because of that. Um, but because, all of my curiosities and my criticism, I am still going to read forward, keep going forward because this is only part one of what will probably be a 3 or 4 part book review, because this book is an absolute thick beast. I'm gonna keep reading, keep trying to keep connecting the dots, and hopefully discover where all this early confusion really pays off in the end. And if you made it this far in this book, please let me know in the comments. And if you read Promise of Blood, did the really opening hook you, or did it leave you just as confused as it left me? I really want to know. And if you're enjoying these honest reviews and these honest first impressions, please be sure to follow me on TikTok, smash the subscribe button on YouTube, and hit that follow button for the Read It Rant podcast on Spotify so you don't miss the next installment or the next review or the next author interview. Until next time, I'm going to keep reading, I'm going to keep questioning, and keep ranting about all these fantastical books. Until then, though, Read It and Rant is out!